Hey everybody, I'm Anthony and this is Dynamic Buzz. We're here at day 3 of C2E2 and I'm here with Christopher Jones, the artist behind the Young Justice comic book series. When you took on the role of being the artist for Young Justice, obviously you took on the concept art that they already had for the TV show. Was there any special traits that you added to it of your own?
Well, it's always interesting when you're drawing something that's based on a property with really specific character models, like something that would be an animated TV show, because you certainly want to bring a lot of your own style to it, and you do, but it kind of gets lost behind trying to match the models from the show. I was given copies of the animation models for all the main characters to try to guide the artwork, but certainly in not only the way the characters are drawn, but the way the story gets told, the composition of the page, you know, I'm still bringing a lot of my own style, a lot of my own sensibilities to it. So it really ends up being a blend. It's always hard to describe to somebody in words where the line is between the look of the show and my own style. Mm-hmm. You have to kind of look at my work on, say, Young Justice in the context of the other things I've drawn, and then hopefully you can kind of see, it's like, okay, I can see what Christopher Jones' style is that carries through from project to project. All
right. And so since you've been doing it for the series, is there a character that you wish you could have drawn in, that you could have added, that really wasn't? I guess they didn't have rights to at one point, but you'd have liked to draw in the series? Well,
I got to draw so many great characters. One story that was in the planning stages and ended up, we weren't able to get to it, is we were going to do a two-parter of the Marvel family. Mm-hmm. Captain Marvel appeared in the show and I got to draw him in the comic, but we were going to do a story that gave you the whole Marvel family and told the origin story and all that. And I would have gotten to do the designs for the Young Justice versions of
the entire Marvel
Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel and Shazam and all that stuff. Our Captain Marvel Jr. was actually going to be called Lieutenant Marvel, but it was going to be Freddie Freeman and the whole thing. So yeah, that would have been a lot of fun. I'm a huge Batman fan, and the series I did before Young Justice was the Batman Strikes, which was another animation tie-in book. But for various reasons that I never understood why, they never let us use, or the show for that matter, use Two-Face, the Scarecrow, or Ra's al Ghul, who happen to be 3 of my favorite Batman villains. Yeah. So I was so happy when drawing Young Justice, we got to have Ra's al Ghul in an issue, because I finally got to draw Ra's al Ghul. We were talking about maybe trying to do the Scarecrow at some point in Young Justice, which would have been a lot of fun, because I love the Scarecrow. So that's one I wish we could have gotten to.
So, do you like the idea of that, there's the TV show and then there's a comic book and it kind of they fill in each other's gaps?
Yeah, we were in a very lucky, unusual situation with the comic that largely because Greg Weisman, who is not only one of the main writers for the show, but one of the 2 co-producers, was writing the comic. The comic got to be much more relevant and intertwined with the narrative of the TV show than you often have for spin-off media. The example I always like to use is, if you are a fan of any of the Star Trek novels, there are some really good ones, but usually they have to kind of exist seamlessly within the continuity of the television episodes, which are considered to be the canon of Star Trek. In the case of Young Justice, a lot of storylines that ended up in the comic were things that were developed as they were figuring out stories for the show, and they were figuring out backstories for characters, or just part of plot lines that as they had a finite number of 22-minute episodes to do, they just never found room for. So, a lot of the things we did in the comic were very relevant to the show, and as far as Greg Weisman was concerned, were considered canon. And so that's a very unusual situation for a comic tie-in to a TV show, but that was a lot of fun. happened.
Yeah, because the first time I saw for like the Joker for the Young Justice was in the comic book.
Yep.
And
yeah.
So were you the one who like set that out, or was there already design for the Joker?
Well, the Joker appeared in one of the earliest issues, which I didn't start drawing the book until number 5. Mm-hmm. The lead time on animation is such that even though there were a few times, the Joker was one, the Terror Twins were another one, that they appeared in the comic before they were seen on the show. Yeah. They'd already been designed for the show, but when they were put into the comic, it was with the understanding that you'd see them in the comic first, and then the episode they were in was going to air later. One of the reasons for a lot of the run of the comic, it was significantly behind in the timeline where the TV show was, is that Greg didn't know for sure when episodes would air. You know, Young Justice during its time was plagued with a lot of hiatuses, and those were as much of a surprise to the creative team working on the show as anybody. Mm-hmm. So they were never 100% certain when a given episode was going to air until very shortly before it aired. And so the concern was that if we did something in the comic referencing an event from an episode, we might get to a point where that came out before that episode had aired, and when that hadn't been the intention. Yeah. So, you know, they always kept the comic fairly significantly behind where the show was. And then even when we moved to the season 2 invasion time frame with issue 20, all of our story was taking place about 1 month before the events of the first episode of season 2. So we were still like ahead of, not as far along the timeline as the show was, but it worked out.
There are like even the first point or the first plot line that the Young Justice after the invasion started. That's what I wish we had as the TV show, instead of where we kind of had that. They never really referenced back to the 5-year gap at all.
Yeah, well, they did in bits and pieces. Yeah. Certainly, it wasn't as fully explored as it could have been. Mm-hmm. I don't know how. I don't think there was another big time gap planned going into season 3, but presumably, if as more of the episodes would have accumulated, you would have probably gotten more and more of the backstory filled in. Because, they always seem to like with Young Justice to do stories that jump around a little bit and like let's find out what. So I mean, I would love more episodes of the show. I'd love to do more issues of the comic. I don't really have any insider info of what's happening with that. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm not privy to whatever discussions are going on. So yeah, I would be delighted to have there be more. I don't have.
Everyone here would be too.
Yeah, but I have no knowledge. I don't know what's going on with that.
All right, because I mean, you would have got to draw Darkseid as we saw at the very end of season 3.
Oh, I know. And how much would I love to draw Darkseid in Young Justice? Come on. But yeah, I think once they did that episode where Desaad showed up, everyone was sort of like, oh, we've got Apocalypse in our future. It's always fun when you have fans that are discovering these characters for the first time through a TV show like this. It was great watching online as people were reacting to the rants by G. Gordon Godfrey on the TV show, but didn't know from the comics the context for who this guy was. Yeah. So they're just trying to figure out, what's this guy's deal? Doesn't he understand? And of course, if you know the history of the comics character, he's making trouble on purpose. Yeah. He's not from here.
Yeah. A new god.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks a lot. I just wanted to say, like, this image was my favorite that just came up for Young Justice.
Yeah, this image here was just done as the cover for issue number 20, but I think because there were so few images out there that showed the bulk of the season 2 team, it really I saw it all over the place, not only in reference to the comic but even the TV show on the internet, just when people needed an image to represent the current state of Young Justice. So yeah, it was great to see that get as much play as it did.
All right, well, thanks a lot. I'm Anthony, this is Christopher Jones, and this is The Buzz.
I'm Christopher Jones, and this is the Dynamic Buzz.